Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to The Dead Tenor. This is poem number 30 of the 58 of Sands at 70. Obviously, we're now in the very center of this cluster, Sands at 70. And we are back to Walt Whitman's love of music, his love of opera, and we are now working again with a celebration of an individual, much like Casaubon, the poem that we just worked with. These two poems sitting side by side here in Sands at 70, I find that remarkable. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you were there through our inscription study to a certain country church. He comes to mind right away. His celebration of music and opera, we commented on so many times in prior lectures, and now it'll kind of culminate maybe in this poem. We gave a set of introductory comments to Sands at 70. I'm hopeful that you experienced it. As we said, we already looked at old Casaubon. Now, let's take a look at what Norton's has to tell us about this. The poem was first published in the Critic newspaper, November 8, 1884. The poem is a tribute to Signor Pascal Brignoli, whose funeral in New York City of November 3rd, 1884 is recorded in a newspaper clipping that actually is attached to the very manuscript of this poem. Whitman himself identified the singer on an envelope in which he mailed the poem to his friend William Douglas O'Connor. Now, we are going to get the mention of a number of operas here. We've seen this before. You're going to hear about Fernando's, you're going to hear about Marciano's, you're going to hear about Hernani's. These are all characters from different operas, and each one of these will be ones that Whitman loved. And as we commented before, he loved his Donizetti, he loved his Verdi, and there's a couple of Verdi operas here and a couple of Donizetti operas that will be referenced. This must have been a great, great singer with a great voice. By the way, remember, the word tenor used so regularly in Leaves of Grass, Song of Myself 26, I heard you, Solemn Sweet Pipes, Proud Music of the Storm 6, as well as that music is always around me. You'll remember his celebration of the great singers, the great voices. As down the stage again, and remember this notion that life is a stage. I think he learned this from his Shakespeare, and as well, of course, his love of opera. With Spanish hat and plumes, Whitman loved his hats, guys. Go back and look at all the photographs of him. He always was messing around with a different hat, and plumes and gait inimitable, the walking across the stage. Back from the fading lessons of the past, again, Whitman as teacher, and we're going to get to this lesson here in a second again. I'd tell and own. How much from thee? You're going to get 3 now, exclamation points. How much from thee? The revelation of the singing voice from thee, so, and in parenthetics, so firm, so liquid soft. Again, that tremulous, manly timbre, the perfect singing voice, deepest of all to me, the lesson, trial, and test of all. Now, through those strains distilled, how the rapt ears, the soul of me absorbing, Ferdinando's heart, Manrico's passionate call, Hernani's sweet Girano's, I fold, and that's a key verb, I fold thenceforth, or seek to fold, within my chance transmuting freedoms and loves and faiths, notice all capitalized, unloosed cantabile, as perfumes, colors, sunlights, correlation. From these, for these, with these, a hurried line, dead tenor, a wafted autumn leaf, and of course you have to smile with the use of the word leaf, dropped in the closing grave, the shoveled earth, to memory of thee. Now, I find this an interesting little poem of tribute, but I also find this an interesting poem because it's clear that what Whitman respected most from these great musicians that he witnessed in his own lifetime is the goal of Leaves of Grass. In other words, he wants to be able to send his poems out from the stage of life to us. And this is, one of the reasons we call this Talks with Walt, because so much of the ambition here for us is to try and capture a little bit of what Whitman wanted. And it's all right here in this poem. The idea of transmutation, to take ideas and to transmute them. Notice perfumes, colors, sunlights, correlation, to somehow capture all of that as is done in music. And I think at 2A, the point here is that a life well lived deserves respect at the end. At 2B, I love that Whitman will name all of these different characters, just assuming that his audience would know, and probably a better chance of that in Whitman's day than certainly in our own. I mentioned at 3A to a certain Cantracciazzi, but and all the other poems in Leaves of Grass that have to do with music, and especially Proud Music of the Storm comes to mind, but also of opera. But I want us to think for a moment about T.S. Eliot's greatest four poems, the four quartets. And what he said about his goal was to somehow capture in poetry what Beethoven had done with his musical oeuvre. But I think standing behind a lot of four quartets, and the ambition of four quartets for T.S. Eliot is in fact a little poem like this. That is to say, the anticipation, the goal is to try and take these ideas and share them through poetry, much like a tenor will work on the stage. Finally, at 3B, what artist that you follow, in your estimation, deserves the most respect at their party? And to what degree do you find reading Leaves of Grass as a musical enterprise? I'm hopeful that it is something of that. Thank you.